Hello and welcome to the Godless Kitchen. Many of you may know me as the Thoughtful Atheist from my other channel, but today I am the Thoughtful Atheist Chef. Ironically, the very first video that we're going to be doing is religiously inspired food. Just because we don't believe in religion doesn't mean that we can't take a little lesson from their thousands of years of cooking experience. Today what we're going to be making is an atheist egg bread, or as the Jews call it, challah. I'm going to start off with some active dry yeast. I'm using a packet and a half or 1.5 tablespoons, 1 3/4 cups of lukewarm water. And since yeast really likes sugar, I'm going to add a generous tablespoon of honey to this mixture as well. So I'm just going to start this on a very low speed. Now I'm just going to let this go for probably about 5 minutes total. Let the yeast bloom just a little bit. Now I have a half cup of olive oil here. And once I have that in there, now I'm going to turn up my whisk just a bit. Then I'm going to bring it down low, and now it's time for the eggs. So the recipe calls for 5 eggs, but in this part I'm only going to be using 4. Be sure to add the eggs one at a time. Next, you're going to be adding the rest of the sugar. And this is a half cup of sugar. A full tablespoon of salt. This recipe calls for 2 different kinds of flour. This is flour that is bread flour, which is a little bit higher in protein and creates a little bit of a denser material. And we also have all-purpose flour. Total amount of flour going into this dough is going to be somewhere between 7 and 8.5 cups. We're going to start with 2 cups of bread flour. The rest of it we're going to need is going to be all-purpose flour. You want this dough to be wet but not sticky. So you really need to be patient while you're getting your dough prepared here. You're starting to form a ball now. Obviously now it's starting to stick again because it's too wet. So we'll bring in number 6. You see, it's a very thick dough. Even the machine struggles with it a little bit. Once it gets really this kind of smooth surface on it, you'll know you're about ready to go. It's kind of a little bit sticky, but it's not going to, it wouldn't stick to a rolling pin, for example. What I want to do now is I want to make it into a big ball. What we need to do is we need to lightly coat this bowl with a little bit of your olive oil. And do be sure to get all the way up the side because this dough is going to rise. Grab your ball of dough and stick it right down on in there. I'm also going to put a little bit of oil over the dough. Okay. So now, you need to let it rise. This is going to be the first of 3 total rises. Some sort of cloth, and just lay it over. Okay, so my method involves a very simple cake pan. I'm using a 9 by 13. I'm going to put this pan on the bottom. And then, I'm going to take some freshly brewed hot water and fill the pan with it. And just like that. Close her on up. It should double in size. Okay, so it's been about an hour. And you can see that it's risen quite nicely. So now we got to do, it's called punching down the dough, but you don't really want to punch it, you really just kind of want to flatten it. A bit of a floured surface. Turn it out. And what we're going to do is rather than punch it, right, we're going to press it from the middle out to the edges. And now I'm going to wrap it up into a ball again. It's the same process as before. Exact same thing. This goes into the bottom. Cover this up. This second rise will only take about a half an hour. So once again, it goes right in the oven and we'll refill the hot water. And just as before, we're going to punch down our dough. So again, I'm going to make it into a ball. Now this batter can either make one really, really large challah, or it can make two average size challahs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half, and I will put half aside for the time being. As for this piece, I'm going to cut it into thirds. You need to make each of these into long rolls, about a foot long. I first start usually by squeezing, and then I'll put it down on my working surface and start to roll it out. So that at rest looks kind of long enough. Okay, so now we've got 3 pieces. You're going to braid these pieces together. I'm going to start by sticking the 3 pieces at the end here together, kind of pinch them all up into each other. Start with the outside right and move it over the middle, and then the outside left over the middle. And again, outside right over the middle, outside left over the middle. And when you do reach the other end, you do the same thing. You just kind of pinch all the breads together, and I like to kind of tuck it underneath. Okay, so now I've got 2 challahs. I've got one that's ready to go into the oven, which is on a baking sheet or on a cookie sheet, and on top of that I have some parchment paper. The other one is just on some parchment paper. I don't want to cook both of these tonight. The challah, the dough, keeps very, very well in the freezer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap it up in some parchment paper. Then you'll take this wrapped up piece and just throw it directly in your freezer. Now if you're going to be using the frozen challah, that dough will still need to rise a 3rd time as well. So you want to make sure to fully defrost the dough before you put it in the oven in its steam bath for the final rise. Approximately 5 hours on the counter should do the trick just nicely. Okay, and the final rise goes like this. No covers, no nothing, just the challah in its final resting place on the parchment, on the cookie sheet, on the middle rack, and the same story with the boiling water in the pan underneath. Now you're going to want to let that sit there in the oven for 20 to 30 minutes. We are going to make one final preparation. We're going to make an egg wash for the challah itself. It'll give it a really, really nice golden crust, give the topping something to stick to. Traditional toppings for a challah are either sesame seeds or poppy seeds. We're going to start with 1 egg, and we just want the yolk out of the egg. Put that in a small bowl, and I'm also going to use a very small amount of honey. This will really give it a nice golden crust and give it kind of a sweetened crust as well. A handful, maybe 2, of water. Now just stir this up like you're making scrambled eggs or something along those lines, and that's all there is to that. Yep, and looking good. So all we got to do now is take our egg and honey wash, and using a basting brush, we're just going to coat every single space on the top. Now generally I'll do this twice just to make sure that I got a really, really good coating on there. Now your topping of choice. For me, it's got to be sesame seeds. So, and once the oven hits 375, we're going to stick this in there for about 20 to 30 minutes. If you're using the double batch, the 6 braid, you're probably going to have it in there for about 30 to 40 minutes. But really, when you know it's done is when the top turns a nice dark golden brown. It has been about 23 minutes, and this challah is looking pretty done. Watch out because you have the water in there, remember, so there's some steam in the oven usually. There we go. Beautiful, ain't it? It's very important to let this cool all the way before you break into it. It's a very doughy bread, and if you don't let it cool all the way, the parts of the dough may not set, especially in the middle. Traditionally, for Jews, when you make challah, it's made for Shabbat dinner. And at Shabbat dinner, there's a special prayer that's said for eating bread. And what will happen is the entire family will gather around, and everybody will get their hand on one of these knots, and they say the prayer all together, and then they tear off a piece.
Oh.
Now, we being atheists, we don't necessarily have to say a prayer, but it is a good way to eat the bread nonetheless. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Happy eating. And don't forget to share with the whole family. See you later, guys.